Welcome to the doctor's office. How can I help you today?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Well, I've been not feeling great lately. I've been experiencing some mild symptoms that I want to have checked on. So I can start by telling you about one of them that I've been experiencing in my current organization. So let me tell you about it. So right now, as part of the Scrum teams, we have UX and UI designers. However, they don't participate in the sprint nearly as much as the developers or the testers. And I sometimes end up feeling like they are wasting their time being in the Scrum team meetings. But at the same time, I do see how the close collaboration is beneficial for the product. So is there a solution to this situation? Should the designers be stakeholders instead of part of the Scrum teams? Is there a cure for this? Is this grave, Doctor?
Well, as the consultant answer goes, it depends. Like, what are the skills that you need on board to actually create a done increment consistently each sprint? If those UI people have skills that you would need on a continuous basis to involve during the sprint, throughout each sprint, then I would say yes, involve them as much as possible and have them on the team. Also, I would be curious on why they don't want to participate for the rest of the sprint. Maybe, other than the UI and the UX work, maybe they have skills that could support the work of the others as well. Also, don't focus too much on we are developers, we are coders, we are testers, we are UX or UI. The Scrum Guide specifically mentions developers are people who work creating stuff for the product. Whether that's UX or anything else, it doesn't matter, you're a developer. I would also question whether you're able to work as a team if everyone sticks to their individual silos. So that might be a really good question to discuss during your sprint retrospective as well. Have you ever done that before?
Yes, and we've been exploring solutions, proposals for this issue. We are trying to have collaborative sessions for the user flow implementation, for the managing of edge cases, for the design, for some improvements from the feedback we get during the sprint. But even so, we still struggle to have the designers as involved in the sprint because they are also designing the next features ahead. They are also working in other parts of the company, maybe for the marketing, because this is not a very big company, so the designers have to deal with several things at the same time. And that is the main problem, that for the first week of the sprint, they collaborate and they have user flow sessions and design sessions with the developers. They contribute to the sprint goal, but then for the more coding, like the coding focused part of the sprint, I don't think they collaborate that much. That is why I see them potentially as external stakeholders.
They could be a consultant as being a subject matter expert, but I think there's a really important thing in your answer as well, is that they're basically being requested or needed by other parts of the organization, leading to context switching. They are focusing on other stuff than the product that you're working on. So they continuously have to switch, and it has its impact on the motivation of people as well. So this might be something to address, not just with the Scrum team, but with the wider organization. What are we trying to do here? Do we want people to really focus? Can we get that focus? And if yes, how should we do that? How should our Scrum teams look like? Does that help?
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome.
We are building cross-functionality in the teams, and for example, we are trying to run away from the tester versus developer by merging their skills, testers becoming coders, let's say, and the other way around. So, like, I can see the willingness from the organization and from the team members to blur those lines.
Yeah. Just for the sake of very purely sticking to theory, cross-functional just means that you, as a team, have all the skills on board to deliver that done increment. Not necessarily that people are able to pick up each other's work, but that as a team you have all the skills on board to create a done increment.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. But at the same time, they want to, like, personally, all of them want to develop, let's say, full stack skills. So I welcome that as well.
Awesome. Hopefully that's going to help you a little bit. I'm really curious what's going to come out of the conversation. If this doesn't cure the issue, feel free to come back.
I think the focus conversation will be an interesting one to have, like, because we are struggling in general with focus, and it's no wonder because the company is growing, is changing, the product is changing too. And we are struggling to keep the focus, and this can be a good conversation to have, both for the designers and for the rest of the company as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It does detrimental things for the quality that you can deliver.
Exactly. Okay, thank you so much for that.
You had some more symptoms that you want to discuss.
Yes, so that one was like a mild symptom, let's say. It's not causing me much pain. But this following one is a little bit trickier. So, here it goes. Our product backlog right now is divided into multiple ones. We have a technical debt backlog, a backlog, and even a natural language processing backlog, because that is something that we do. And that later backlog is managed by another product owner. So the main product owner is focused on the main product backlog, the one that contains features picked by teams every sprint. And the reason behind this is that the main product owner doesn't have any technical background and is unable to understand tasks that talk about natural language processing or technical stuff in general. As you can imagine, this situation has led to bugs and technical debt not being paid attention to, as well as having a separate team for infrastructure matters. And they manage their own backlog as well. I have proposed unifying the backlogs, but I'm not sure this is the right approach. How can I handle this situation?
Unifying the backlog into a single one would be the best option to start off with. That's the solution. Now, why? Because from conception till the point that the product goes out of commission, your Scrum team is accountable for any part of the work, whether that's new features, technical debt, bugs, any other work, database, I don't care. All the work that needs to be performed on the product is in that single source of truth, the product backlog. This has a lot to do with focus relating to the previous question as well.
Yes, agreed.
You'll be splitting into focus and you won't see that much pressure. Also, transparency is very much being limited if you have multiple backlogs. That's part one. It also feels like you have multiple captains on your ship. You have two product owners responsible for specific parts. And not just the one product owner who is accountable for the entire thing.
Exactly.
To some extent, I understand the argument that he doesn't have all the skills on board to understand the technical part of it. I wouldn't be able to do that instantly as well. But by putting another product owner next to it is persevering that behavior. And to give you an extreme example of what that can do, my childhood hero, Dr. Phil, always referred to this as, for instance, parents of a drug-addicted kid. Now, this drug-addicted kid comes to its parents saying, "Hey, could you give me $50 so I can buy new clothes?" And even though the parents know that $50 won't get spent on clothes but on drugs, they still give them the money, give her the money. And why? Because else we don't know what she's going to do for it. Whether she's going to steal or do even worse things. to get that $50, so we'll just give her the $50 so we know it's done in a safe way. This is enabling behavior. If you enable your product owner to have a separate product owner next to it, you'll just be enabling that product owner to dive away from his accountabilities, and you'll be persevering with this kind of behavior. It's also very much a unicorn mentality to think that you can that there's going to be one point where you're going to possess all the knowledge as a product owner to know everything and anything about the entire product, whether that's technical details, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to market it. Is just not doable. You want to create a team around you that knows this stuff. I mean, me as a Scrum Master, I don't know the technical part either, but I ask the people who do know. And this way you're being fed the information that you should know, at least to make the right judgment calls, to create that order in the backlog, and to maximize the value coming out of the product. What do you think about that?
I mean, I agree. Me as a Scrum Master, I also don't understand all of the technicalities, but I do ask a lot, what does this imply in the product, how this impacts the product, and I always try to change the titles of the tasks so that the product owner and everyone in the company would be able to understand the purpose of the task. And then in the description, I add the technicalities that were previously in the title. Yeah, I agree with this, but I wasn't realizing that situation was bad, and the product owner had to make an effort to understand and to unify the product backlog. That was the part that I didn't see. Yeah, I didn't want to push him that way, or I didn't want to give him more work, let's say, because I see him struggling already because he has a lot on his plate, and for me, it didn't feel right to tell him, maybe you should pay attention to these other things as well. But now I would consider it.
And remember this rule of thumb. One product owner, one product backlog, and one definition of done. So there's just one list and one accountability that handles that.
And well, this is not like I wasn't planning on asking this, but now that you mentioned the rule of thumb, one product backlog, and it's true that the natural language processing, for example, is part of the product. It's not a different product, it's the same product. We just need to do some natural language processing for it. But we do have an internal application for data entry, user management, and all of that. Would that be a different product?
Does it contribute on the same thing, on the same features, on the same goal that you're trying to achieve with the functionalities?
It does. I mean, it does contribute because it's as I said, it's the data entry point for the internal users, so for the workers of the company to enter the necessary data to later display, analyze and display in the platform, and to manage the clients, the users that benefit from our platform. So it is part of the product, but at the same time, it's never seen by clients. It's used by our workers, by our people, by the customer success, by the...
Back-end platforms have usually never been seen, or the part that you as developers create, your Scrum team creates, is not being seen by the client either. It's still there. And it's the same for the issues that you mentioned here. Even though they don't see it, it's still part of your product.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Does it give you something to think about?
Yes. We are treating it like that, but sometimes I had my doubts. Should we have a different product owner or not, or a team focused on that or not? So,
how do you think focus would be impacted if you create separate backlogs or separate product owners for each individual parts?
I think it would be detrimental for the motivation of the team that works for that product, because in the end it's not the same to be releasing cool stuff to clients that you get praised for, okay? And we celebrate, maybe we should celebrate everything, but it's true that we celebrate the client features more than the internal features. And I think it would be detrimental for the team that has to focus on that, because they would lose sight of the client-facing platform and they wouldn't feel as celebrated as other teams. In terms of focus, I don't necessarily see a problem with the focus, but I do see a problem with transparency and with motivation in that case. In my case.
Has its impact definitely on those areas as well? Yeah. So what would your solution be?
I think this internal application has different stakeholders from the client-facing application, because it is the internal users that will tell us what they need to do their work to, in the end, satisfy the customers. But I see how we can prioritize them equally, prioritize the work in that area along the work in the client-facing product, because in the end they need each other, those two. So they are part of the same thing. I agree. One is the engine and the other is the car, but it is in the same.
Beautiful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely. Thank you.
I think there's one question that you have left.
Yes, and it kind of relates to the this rule of thumb that you were mentioning: one product backlog, one product owner, right? So let me tell you about this situation. So before implementing Scrum and Agile in the organization, so like about 1 year ago, we had a role called VP of Product. Right now, this person is supposed to be the creator of the vision for the product, as well as the bridge between business and product. But at the same time, we have a product owner role, who happens to need the VP approval for everything. This VP of product lives in a different time zone and takes ages to reply to the questions. Sometimes he replies with more questions, making it very painful to make decisions and to guide the product development. This has led to the product owner and the developers being frustrated. But the manager of the company, also the CTO, insists that we need this person's approval at all times, because of course he has a lot of knowledge. So in reality, the way I see it is that the VP is the PO, and the PO is just doing all of the work, talking to clients, stakeholders, internal users, developers, plus taking care of the backlog. How would you approach this situation? Are we in front of a proxy product owner?
Yes, but ultimately, yes, it feels like your product owner is not fully being mandated to make the decisions needed to actually maximize the value of the product. Now, this may come from various reasons, but looking at what the Scrum guide says and how Scrum is supposed to be working, is that the product owner is mandated to make all these kind of decisions. What usually happens, in my experience, when Scrum is being implemented, is that these accountabilities are not thoroughly discussed, and Scrum is being mapped to the existing organization, to the existing structure and the breakdown of how the organization looks like, instead of thinking we're now going to implement something that's completely different from what we've been doing before. What do we need to change? Whether that's on technical part, on accountability part, or on behavior part. And that last aspect usually is not being discussed. It's very much about the framework. We're going to do the daily scrums and we have our reviews, and you go into mechanical scrum rather than actually changing the organization to make this fit for purpose. And then Scrum, or the implementation of Scrum, will fail. Does that resonate with you so far?
It does. And when first adopting Scrum, I did talk about these issues, and we, for example, designated a product owner that wasn't product owner in his former role, and he learned, adapted. We formed the Scrum teams. We broke the silos. So a lot of things did happen when implementing Scrum, but the exception have been the leadership roles, which is usually the problem when adopting Agile and Scrum. Like the managers are the ones feeling lost and pointless at some point. So this role was that role. He was like not the boss, because we have never seen him as boss, but he was like the head of product. But now he should be, or at least as we have been told, he should be a stakeholder. But in reality, he's not a stakeholder, because, as I said, he has to sign off everything we do. And he's not the only one to have to sign off everything we do. There was this other person, which was head of design. And we now have UX and UI experts working along with the Scrum teams, as I said, and those are the ones designing the product. But they also need the head of design approval for everything they do. And sometimes in the sprint reviews, we have these two people criticizing what we do instead of being in our side as they were supposed to. I don't think they feel comfortable either in that role anymore, because so many things have changed, and now like they still feel they are the bosses, but at the same time we don't need them, because we take the decisions ourselves. We have a product owner, we have a stakeholders. So did I freeze?
I lost it. Yeah, I lost it for a second.
Am I back?
But it feels like you're fully back. From what I hear from you so far, it feels like there's a disconnection when it comes to trust, right? It might have to do with the switch where traditional hierarchy is now way less, and accountability and decentralized decision making are switched to from the C levels and management positions to the people actually performing the work. And that might be scary. It might be very challenging for people to let go of that sense of control. And note that I say sense of control, because in practice you don't control these things. You can try to control things. You can only control the work that's being done, but not the outcome. But trust would be a very interesting area to discuss. Like, what's going on? What do we feel where we're heading towards? What do we feel our culture should be? Where do we want our culture to be? And what's our definition of a good organization? And what should we change in the way that we behave to do that? And it might be a very good discussion to have in your sprint retrospectives as well. Invite that person and say, this is what we see is going on. It's a massive bottleneck in our flow. If we want to get more value or validate our assumptions and mitigate risk as soon as we can, we might need to do something with that. What do you feel about that? How do you see this? Maybe there's something behind his or her behavior that you might not know about that's causing this. So to have a good, open, blameless discussion would be very interesting to do.
So you think we can invite them to a retrospective?
You could, yes. There's nothing stopping you from doing so.
I have understood that the retrospective shouldn't have any external guests.
Looking at the Scrum Guide, or the way that I approach these things during my courses that I teach, purely Scrum Guide, it says you inspect the last sprint in regards to individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and the definition of done. And this is very much an individual thing, where it ties together with that. And we can talk about people instead of with people. If you invite them, you have a constructive discussion immediately. You have the right platform to do so. I'm not saying they have to be part with in the entire sprint retrospective, but because this specific thing is such a bottleneck in your flow, and you have to wait for so long, it might be very useful to actually do this.
So I've mentioned this idea before, not in the retrospective, but in general, to have a session with them and like express how we feel, and that I've had several sessions with the teams about this. But when it comes to actually doing something about it, I see a huge lack of courage from the teams. So, for example, there was one time when I tried to speak up for them, and for me as well, because I was also frustrated. I am part of the team, and I tried to say something, but nobody supported me. Like, they acted like they didn't know what I was talking about, you know. And I don't want to be in that
culture of
situation.
fear. Like, what?
Yes.
Are people fearing repercussions?
Well, I think so. I think they are fearing repercussions, but at the same time, the culture is pretty good in that sense. Like, the manager is always encouraging the developers and the teams in general to speak up, to challenge each other, to challenge ideas, to raise concerns. It's true that we have
It might be a very interesting experiment to do, if I can propose that, is to use the liberating structure TRIZ, T-R-I-Z. Do that together with your team when it comes to Scrum values. So, and what TRIZ does is to create the most unwanted desire, at least to identify the most unwanted desire. And then you start identifying things that you might already be doing, and you'll see that these things might pop up and that you can bring to the table and have a good discussion. Like, these are the things that we're seeing. We don't want this to happen, but we're already doing that. And how can we move forward, take actionable steps to make that more, or to mitigate this from happening? Have you ever done that before?
I lost you.
And you're back.
Yes, I lost you for a bit.
Which part did you lose me?
You were talking about the worst desires and the situations that we might be already doing.
Yes, exactly. So what TRIZ does is to identify the most unwanted result that you possibly want, and from that, things that you might already be doing in your day-to-day basis. And then from that point start to identify things that you can move away from this behavior to get a more desired result. So these are the things that we observe that is currently hampering us to actually move away from that unwanted desire, unwanted result. And what can we do to make that more actionable to improve the situation? And this might be a very good thing to do. Have you ever tried that?
No, I was thinking about doing some Scrum values workshops, because I do see how we don't live by the Scrum values yet, especially when it comes to courage. I think the teams are not at that point yet. I relate that to several reasons. For example, the teams being young and junior in general. also the team members being introverts, which may not seem like a reason, but they don't like exposure as much. And also we have a multicultural background, like we have people from different places, and mixing all of that is a challenge in itself, and we sometimes even struggle inside the team. And also
I can imagine.
And also I think that the teams they do feel like teams, but they are still lacking some cohesion. Like, they are a team, but I don't think they really feel like they got each other's back, so
Yeah.
I think they also fear not being supported by the rest of the team. So I was thinking about continue doing team buildings to strengthen the connection, to strengthen the links between the team members, and I've been doing that. And also Scrum values workshops, where we play some exercise or put something into practice. We perform experiments and see what happens. But I
think that
will
would
definitely
be
try.
working together pretty well.
I will definitely try what you mentioned, especially for the courage.
Also,
workshop.
have them think about the what they see would be the definition of an awesome team. Like, think about a time, and that would be a good format for a workshop as well. Think about what a time that you have been part, or you've seen an awesome team. What are characteristics and kind of behavior that happened in such an awesome team, and how do we want our team to become awesome, and how does that look like, and what can we do to make that take a little step into that definition of awesome.
You know the team charter exercise? Because it's more or less what you are saying.
Yes.
So I was about to do that exercise with the teams too. I think it's a very good idea for them to visualize themselves as a team and imagine the possibilities and feel motivated by those possibilities. So yeah, I'm going to definitely.
There is a whole realm of possibilities open for it, but indeed you have to discover them. And those making steps in that realm of possibilities is a lot more motivating than always having to fear the repercussions. How detrimental is it to your motivation if you always have to fear like not speaking up, because else it might bite me in the ass, or else I might not be supported by my team members? That's not something that's going to help you persist, and it's not good for your mental health either. If you always have to look over your shoulder, try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So we've discussed several options that you can take. Does that help you a little bit forward?
Yes, definitely. I think the manager leadership problem that we have, like those old roles, is going to be there as long as we allow it to be there, and thus the problem comes from the teams, from the lack of trust. But it's no wonder we have a lack of trust, because we don't live by the Scrum values at this point, and then trust cannot happen, right? So
yeah. I
think we have to work from the inside and then be able to modify the outside landscape too.
Exactly. As a last advice, before sending you off into the wild and closing the doctor's office for today, reading The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni is exactly what this is about.
Okay. So that is the prescription, that is the pills I have to take.
Highly recommended.
Perfect.
Yes,
I will.
This would be the pill in paper form.
All right. Okay.
Hopefully this has helped you, Carmen.
A lot.
Thank you very much for coming to the
so
doctor's
much.
office. If there are more symptoms popping up or things that you want to discuss, feel free to come back.
I will definitely. Thank you so much.
Well, You're welcome. All the best.
Goodbye.